Good evening, guys. Welcome to another episode of the Tennessee Valley Outdoors. Uh, I'm Joe. I'll be your host tonight. Tonight, we're going to talk about the truth behind bedded bucks. Uh, there's a big gathering of hunters out there these days that think the only way you can hunt a deer is you got to set up 100, 200 yards from his bed and kill him. That's not true. That's not true at all. And if you think a deer does the same thing all the time, you're wrong. There's certain places that these tactics will work, certain places these tactics is not going to work. So we're going to get into the discussion here. First thing is deer do not always do the same thing, and they never eat the same thing, they never bed the same way, you know, they never travel the same way. uh, there's this theory going around that deer only bed with the wind at their back, like the wind going this way, and they look out in front of them and they'll bed up against a log or something. That's not true. Or they'll bed in cattails with the wind at their back, but looking this way. That's not true. And I can tell you it ain't true because I've been a deer hunter all my life. Certain times deer will bed that way, but they don't always do that. You take a deer that's laying on the riverbank, like here in Alabama, we got the big giant Tennessee River. Deer love to bed right on the riverbank. I'm talking about with the water at their back, open water, where's boats and everything. People out there fishing, they're laying up there 30 yards on the bank. Well, when they're up there close to that water, they will bed to their back to the water and the wind in their face. I've seen them do it. The land that I hunt, the way that I hunt, I see these deer doing this. They're laying there with their back against the water because they know ain't nothing going to come and get them from the water, not a predator wise. There's not a lot of big predators here in Alabama. Or, I mean, we got a few bear, but a bear ain't going to swim across the lake or a big river to kill a deer. Deer's going to get away from them, unless it's a fawn. But anyway, I've seen them lay with the wind in their face a bunch of times. And I'm not talking about does, I'm talking about bucks. On transition lines, where you got a wall of thick, thick cover, I've seen bucks bed on transition with the wind in their face. So it's not always going to be wind at back for a deer bed. It's not going to be like that. If you're trying to set up the way these guys go up in these big swamps up north and places like that, and they're trying to get as close to that bed as possible and kill them at the first feed tree that deer comes to. Hey, I understand they have to hunt that way, but I don't have to hunt that way, and neither do you, because deer don't always bed that way. And if you try to find some of that property around here that deer bed that way, you're going to be shocked to find out that it ain't always that way. A lot of the people that try to get you to hunt a certain way or to do a certain thing is because they're salesmen. I ain't taking shots at nobody. I'm telling the truth. You got people that sell climbing sticks, people that sell tree stands, people that sell saddles. All these companies out there, they're trying to sell you something. Deer, the scents that people sell, all that stuff. What you got to do is find out what works best to where you live, to where your hunting area is. You know, I've tried every tactic out there and I've had them work and I've had them not work. Nothing's a sure thing. But back to what I was talking about deer beds, along transition areas. If you have a thick wall of transition, say it's a big buck cannot get through it. I'm talking about thick. I mean, I don't know. Some people don't know what thick is until you come to the south. There's places a deer cannot go, but they will still bed against it with the wind in their face because they can't. They know nothing's going to get them from behind. I've seen them do it. Uh, I've seen them bed along creek banks with water at their back, wind in their face. I've seen them bed in open hardwoods with the wind in their face. I have seen them lay against logs like you see, with the wind going over their back. I have seen them bed on leeward side of hills, but I have also seen them bed on windward side with the wind in their face. So guys, you can't just go along just setting up every time at every place for a deer to be bedded with the wind at its back. It ain't gonna work. Not every time. Because like I said, nothing's a sure thing. You need to be able to adapt. Look at what you're doing. Go out. You know, assess what's going on. Like, okay, I see over here. There's a deer bedding right here on this transition. Well, what kind of transition is it? Is it really thick sawbriars that a deer is not even going to go into, that a rabbit can barely get into? Or is it, you know, a timber cut? Is it a clear cut where a deer can actually walk? Is it a bean field where a deer are just bedding up against the edges of beans? Deer want to bed on the edge of anything. If you had a field out here with nothing but tall grass and there was a telephone pole laying on the ground with no limbs, they would bed against it. I've seen them bed against logs with no limbs on them. They feel comfortable with their back against something, whether if it's water, a ditch, a down tree, a stump, a root ball. I've seen them bed on top of logs. But a lot of times, where I'm hunting at on the river, I hunt on the river, open water, open lakes. Around the edge of the lake, if you're hunting flat river bottoms, the deer will bed along the edge of the lake. They're usually 20 or 30 yards from the water. And deer can turn their heads almost all the way around. Their neck is 3 foot long. They don't have to bed with the wind at their back. They can turn their head around and smell that way. They can turn their head around and smell this almost all the way around. Plus, they use their ears to catch the wind. A lot of people don't know that. When them deer throw their ears up, yeah, they're listening, but they can also catch scent with their ears, and it pushes it down in their face. So if the wind's blowing in their face, they turn their ears pile. They're pushing that scent. They can lean their ears forward like this, and they can make the scent come down in their face. They can taste, like where you walk, they can taste scent. They can smell scent. They can taste it. They can do everything with scent but see it and hear it. So if you think deer bed one way, you're wrong. It ain't always wind back. So let's go ahead and get that out of the way. So where are some of these places you should be hunting? There's more than one food source too, guys. Ain't always going to be an acorn crop. Maybe you may be hunting in pines, and you may have to depend on ag. Usually here in the South, deer start out on ag, and in the summer, they're on ag like beans. You'll see them eating lots of grasses, all sorts of grasses and weeds and briars, and there's lots of tender browse for them, and clover that just grows wild. And you cannot just pass up these feeding areas just to go hunt where one's bedding or where you think he's bedding. You don't ever know where he's bedded. So sometimes keying in on food, can get you a big buck. You do not always have to hunt his bed. And I'm not taking shots at nobody. I love everybody out there who makes YouTube content. A lot of the things they say is correct, but it's about the area they hunt in. It's not always the same in other parts of the country. And I live here, in the Appalachian Mountains. We a lot of thermal hubs. I know you've heard guys talk about thermal hubs, and down in the bottoms how you got creeks, and they call them SMZs. I just always called it the creek that ran through the holler. You know what I mean? I try to keep things simple. They got all these big words for it and stuff, but you got your blowdowns, you got thickets, tall grass, sawbriars. There's a lot of that around here in the South. I got this stuff wrote down. I've been sitting around thinking all day. Hill country beds, they're not always leeward. Sometimes they're windward. But we'll get back to what I was talking about around water. I've noticed that anything that a deer beds near or around, there's a hub there. So you got a thermal hub. They got all this stuff, but it's a hub. If there's one tree out in a 100-acre pasture and a deer's bedding under it, that's a hub. If there's 5 trees out there with 5 beds under them, are all hubs. All right, it's bedding hubs. But what I've noticed here in the South, a deer will bed on the water, around the river bottoms, around the lakes, around the rivers, around the water. They'll bed right up against the water, wind at face. Then they got the thermal pull. When that water starts to cool down, all that's in effect. So a lot of times, if it's warm, say the wind's blowing in their face, and then that thermal, the water warms up, starts to rise and blows out, it creates a little hub against the water. I call them lake hubs or lake beds, and that's where you start to get that swirling wind. And if a deer can find a swirly wind, they'll lay in it. It don't matter. And people think, thermals always rise in the morning and they fall back down in the evening. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. If you're out in the mountains, you're hunting hill country, and you start getting a shaded side of that hill, the sun has went over you, it's starting to cool down. It don't matter if it's 9 o'clock in the morning or if it gets cloudy. If it comes a rain shower, you're going to start experiencing falling thermals. You got to be ready for these things at all times. That's why I say you cannot just hunt deer beds. Go out in these woods, guys. Walk around. Do your scouting. Scout these feed areas. Find out how far the deer are bedding. Put up some cameras if you have to. If you don't want to use cameras, you don't have to. But if you do use cameras, great. Put them up. Get inventory of the deer. Take the biggest buck you got on camera and say, all right, where's this deer bedding? All right. You got pictures of him in an ag field at 3:30 in the morning. He ain't bedding there. Look for thick cover, set up and along a transition line on a trail from bed to food in between. Try to meet him halfway. Try to figure out what time is he getting to his bed. You don't want to just hunt evenings. A lot of people these days are just hunting the evening. When you don't hunt the mornings, you're missing a great feeding period to kill a deer. Deer feed in the mornings from around daylight to 9 or 10 o'clock. I've killed them eating. I've killed them eating acorns. Good deer. And big buck, if there's does moving around, big bucks are going to be with them, especially during the rut. So you can't just hunt one way. Certain people hunt that way because they have to. I'm not certain people. I got lots of terrain around here that I can hunt. That's why I call it hunt the valley, because I'm hunting the entire Tennessee Valley. I may hunt a swamp, and I may hunt with bedded bucks out in front of me trying to get as close as possible. But I don't always do that, guys. I may hunt a feeding area in the morning. It may be a dropping oak tree that's dropping fresh white oak acorns, and the deer are just demolishing it. If you've got a hot tree and there's deer sign under it, deer poop, and it's just, you can see the holes off the acorns where they've crunched them and spit them out, you better hunt that. It may be only that one tree within 100 acres that they're even hitting. You better hunt that and hunt it all day if you can. And when I'm going down the edge of a transition line, traveling it, walking in with my bow, my setup on my back, of course, I'm going to travel into the wind or a crosswind. Because, like I said, I have seen deer lay with the wind in their face. I've seen them do it. They lay just like this, wind blowing right in their face. Because all they got to do, like I said, if something happens, the wind switches, they can get up and move. But it's usually up against something. Like I'm up against this wall with the wind in my face. They know ain't nothing coming from back here. If it's water, if it's a giant thicket that a rabbit barely can get through, they know nothing's coming from there. Especially briars. Deer love to just live right beside them. So that's kind of my little rant for a minute. I get fired up when I see guys here where I live trying to hunt, certain ways that And they always think that's the only way you can hunt these deer, and it's not. So hunt those feeding areas, guys. The feeding areas. Hunt transition, hunt trails, and hunt beds. Don't just be one type of hunter, because if you are, you're going to be very disappointed. Very, very disappointed. I seen now where guys are saying they ain't deer on saddles anymore. Man, where I live out here in the Appalachian Mountains, you better find you a saddle somewhere where a deer can come through the mountain. Sometimes that's all there is for him to get from one side of the mountain to the other. Sometimes he can't get up because there's a bluff there. Sometimes he has to go through a gap in the mountain. That's still a saddle. If you got a mountain that's running like this, it goes down, comes back up. That is a saddle right there. He has to go through that gap. The deer have to travel through these gaps. And along creeks, when you find it, that deer don't want to swim, but they will. If you find a shallow area where a deer can get across, it's one of the best places to hunt on earth. You telling me you're going to pass up a good creek crossing to go hunt a bedded deer? Or to hunt a thermal hub where there's 12 points up inside this giant mountain? All you're doing is sitting in the bottom of the holler, waiting on one of the deer to come out from one of these points and try to kill it. Man, we've been doing it for years. Been doing it for years, guys. We've been hunting points. We've been hunting saddles. We've hunted thermal hubs. We didn't call them that. We didn't call them thermal hubs. All we know, if you got down in the bottom of the holler, you could catch a deer coming off one of them points up there. Because if it was in the evening and you tried to go up there, you was going to jump him up. When I hunted points, I hunted them in the mornings, come in from the top, try to come down on the point. Just don't be one type of hunter, guys. That's what I'm trying to say. Be versatile, be mobile, and agile, and do not be one of these Johnnies that just sit in the one tree stand all year long. He's got his corn pile out there with his little camera on it, and he just sits there all year. Guys, don't do that. So much better than that. I ain't saying don't bait the deer. Bait them if you want to, but you need to move around and hunt those deer. You know, if you got a food plot planted, you don't want to just sit on that same food plot all year. They're going to know you're there. As soon as you walk in the woods and you walk 500 or 600 yards, you don't even have to walk that far. 100 yards through the woods, at least one or two deer already know you're there. Takes them one day. They know you're there. They smell where you walk. Oh, there's a man. A woman went through here. Somebody went through here. I can smell them. And they can just about tell about how long ago that track was. Well, that's a day old. That's 2 days old. That's 3 days old. The same when they smell a doe in heat. They're walking through there and they'd be like, she's fixing to come in the heat. And they go on through there. They don't really bother with her. And all of a sudden, you know, they hit one. She's about a week away. The bucks, they know that. And all of a sudden, they hit a hot one. And when they hit that hot doe, they're after her. They'll go stay with her for a couple of days and get her bred. But don't be one-sided, guys. You can't just say, I'm going to take my little windwalker tree stand and a couple sticks, and all I'm going to do is hunt deer beds. You can't do that. I mean, you can, but you might get one deer a year. I got a whole pocket full of tags. I don't want to just get one. I want to get a couple, you know. Or you can take your climber. Got your climbing set up right here. Oh, API. Everybody's got one of them. Or Summit. Go hunt some feeding areas during muzzleloader season. Go hunt a feed tree during bow season. Grab your saddle setup. I got a setup for everything. I love the saddle setup too. The saddle right here is when I'm going in somewhere really, really deep, or if I don't have a lot of time, you know, I grab this old saddle. If I'm sitting all day, I'm taking the saddle in this. If I'm hunting big open timber, I'm taking me a climber. If I'm gun hunting, I like to have a shooting rest. That's the only reason I have a climber. See, I got the muzzle loader. When muzzle loader season rolls around, I grab the climber. I haven't perfected shooting out of a saddle yet, but I will. I'll get there. I'm good at shooting a bow out of the saddle, but I'm not so good at shooting a rifle out of the saddle or a muzzle loader, whatever you want to call it. I just wanted you guys to know that deer do not always bed wind at back. And don't just think you can hunt deer beds and that's it. You don't have to be that way. Uh, I do really good on the river. Majority of the deer I hunt come from the river bottoms. Even on the private land that I used to hunt, duck hunters use those duck hunters, guys. They will push deer and drive deer to you. You A lot of people say, man, them duck hunters are messing me up. No, they're not. Those duck hunters will help you if you know how to get in there with them. Be friends with them. Don't be mad at them. Be friends with them. Buy the guys a biscuit or something. They'll tell you a lot about deer hunting. Those duck hunters will be out there shooting ducks all day. Deer walking right by their blinds. It don't affect the deer as bad as you think. They may move on around a little bit, but they get used to it in a few weeks. Be nice to everybody you see. If you hunt in public land, private, if you're in a club, don't matter. Be nice. But like I said, I really like hunt feeding areas. I will hunt bedded deer. I hunt the deer the way the deer is traveling. I hunt the deer the way the deers are bedding. Whatever that deer is doing at what time of year it is the way I'm going to hunt it. Early season, yes, it's easy to set up on beds and hunt the first food off that bed. Yes, if they're bedding wind at back. If they're bedding wind at face, it's you're gonna have to come in from the side. So come in at a crosswind if the deer's bedding that wind to its face. You ever noticed how like does when they bed in a group. You jump a herd of does. There goes 5 does. All right. You go up there and you look at their beds. We've all seen it. There's 4 or 5 beds right here in a circle. All right. And those little young bucks, they'll even still be bedding with them until the big buck kicks them out. Or sometimes the little young bucks have joined the bachelor group and they'll bed with those bucks. And they kind of bed in like does too. So early in the season, you got to watch out for, figure out whether it's a bachelor group or a group of does. You don't know. You have to hang a camera or get out, spot and stalk, take your binoculars and glass them. One of my favorite ways to hunt is just to sneak through the woods 30 or 40 yards, sit down, be quiet for a little while, and listen. Keep the wind in my face. Get up, go 30 or 40 more yards, sit back down and listen. Killed a lot of deer doing that, guys, especially with a gun and with a bow. Mostly with a gun, but a lot with a bow. Uh, Other ways of is letting your buddy set up wind from you, let his scent come across through there. Say he's uh, 500 or 600 yards around. Let his scent come through because any deer that comes through and smells them, they're going to come right towards you. Let him push them to you. You can do the same for him. If there's a bedding area, have him walk around and hunt this side of it. You hunt this side, let the wind come from him to you, and they're going to push the deer out in front of you. That's how I do drives in the South. We don't like take 15 or 20 people and drive fields or drive mountains like you see up north. It's just not that popular down here. Plus, it's so thick. I'm saying thick. Everything's been cut. And you got to be real careful because you end up shooting somebody. And we have high powered rifles down here. You can hunt 300 Magnum, 7 mags. You don't want to be on a deer drive somebody over here with a 300 Magnum or an automatic 30-06 or an AR-15. These guys down here don't care. They will, and I'm not going to be driving no deer hollering and hooting, wearing orange. Not me. We got dog season for that. If you want to run dogs, just drop down a little south of here. My county don't allow dog hunting, but I'm not against it. I got a lot of good buddies who do dog hunt, and they kill some big deer. And it don't really affect the deer population like people think. But do not. It's my best tip to anybody. Do not only hunt one way. Got to be different, guys. And remember, deer do not always bed with the wind at their back. Don't always happen. Do the mature bucks always bed with the wind at their back? No. Do does bed with the wind at their back? Always? No. Do young bucks? No. None of them do. They do occasionally. They do occasionally, and they do occasionally bed with the wind at their face. I've seen them do it. And if people say that there's only one way, then they're lying. But there's not. I've seen deer do all kind of things. That's what I was saying earlier. Deer's not always going to do the same thing. You're going to see deer do things in your hunting career. If you hunt long enough, you're going to be like, I didn't even know deer did these things. This thing is smart. You got to think like a deer. You got to be a deer, pretty much. To be a great hunter. Think just like, why are they doing this? When you find what you're reading rubs, you're reading scrapes, say why? Why is this here? Why are they doing this? Why are they bedding up on this ridge and coming down here? You know, where can I pinch these deer off at? Is there a saddle nearby? Is there a pinch point? Is there a bluff gap, a creek crossing? Is there any way I can get him out of the bed or before he gets in the bed? Remember, guys, be versatile, mobile, and agile, and you'll be more successful. And be open minded. Be open minded. Don't have a closed mind. There's some guys that are just so fixated on things, they're closed minded, and they only think things are done one way. And I feel sorry for those guys because I seen guys switch to these other tactics. And I said, man, I ain't seen a deer in 3 years. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I said, well, I'll tell you what you're doing wrong. You're doing somebody else's tactic. Be yourself. What was you doing when you was killing all these deer? Well, I was hunting this way or I was hunting that way. Well, go back to it, man. You know? Yeah, but I wasn't killing monsters. Well, do a better job. Perfect your skill that what you was being successful at. Just perfect it. If you're already being successful, don't change yourself. You can find ways to be more successful already doing what you're doing than to swap over and do something you're not comfortable with. Just figure it out. There's guys that change their bow setup so they can be like other people. I'll tell you my bow setup. I shoot a heavy arrow. I'm not trying to be like nobody. That's just what I shoot. I shoot 650 grains. I shoot a single bevel broadhead, 200 grain head, and I shoot for the heart. If a deer's facing me, I shoot for the heart. If a deer's quartering to, I still shoot for the heart. If he's quartering away, I shoot for the heart. If he's facing away and I want a shot, I'll go up the tailpipe because I got the setup to do it. Out to 30 yards. Past 30 yards, I'm out of luck. But most of my shots come between 0 and 35 yards. I've never taken a deer past 35 yards. What about? So just be open minded. And I want you guys to know that I love each and every one of you. I'm not trying to bash anybody. I'm just telling the truth that deer are not always the same. People are not always the same. And if everything was the same, there wouldn't be any deer. If all deer did was bed this certain way, I'd kill every deer that there was. There wouldn't be any in the state of Alabama. If they only traveled one way, I'd kill every deer that there was. We all would. So remember that, guys. You guys take care. It's the end of the night. Little episode, rant, discussion, whatever you want to call it. I love each and every one of you. Thanks and God bless.